U.S. stocks close higher on the last day of trading under President Joe Biden and ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration as president for the second time later tonight. The Dow Jones rises over 330 points, the S&P 500 gains over 1%, while the Nasdaq rallies 1.5%. Asia mirrors Wall Street's moves to start the week on a positive note as investors await clarity on the policies of the incoming U.S. administration. The GIFT Nifty is also indicating a slightly positive start for our own markets. Oil prices climb as supply concerns over Russian sanctions continue to persist. Brent remains above $80 a barrel. Wipro and Tech Mahindra report a strong third quarter performance as revenue and margins beat estimates, while for Kotak Mahindra Bank it was a better than expected quarter. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting kickstarts in Davos. World leaders, thought leaders, policymakers and top companies will converge at this ski resort to discuss agendas that shape the world. The theme of the meeting this time is collaboration in an intelligent age. The ongoing Ukraine-Russia war, Trump 2.0, artificial intelligence are expected to take center stage over the course of the next 5 days. And we'll keep you abreast of everything that's happening in Davos only on CNBC TV 18. And good morning, you're watching Power Breakfast. You're with me, Hormuz Fatakia, in the Mumbai News Center. Let's first take a look at how the Asian markets are trading at the start of this very important week that lies ahead for global markets. It's a positive start, mirroring the handover that we had from Wall Street. The Hang Seng is up almost 2%, as is the Taiwanese index, which is trading with gains of over 0.6%. Gains also coming from Japan, where the Nikkei is up over 1.5%. The South Korean indices, though, are trading at the flat line. The Shanghai Composite 2 trading with gains of 0.5%. So it's a green screen across the Asia Pacific markets. And pull up the GIFT Nifty as well, just to show you whether that is mirroring that. Sort of. You can see the implied open suggesting a 21-point uptick as of now for our own markets. We're likely to open in the green, but we have plenty of our own to react to, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But speaking of Wall Street, it was a positive session on Friday. All three major indices posted a first weekly gain of 2025. The Dow Jones added over 350 points. The S&P 500 also gained 1%. The Nasdaq also ending higher by 1.5%. CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets were up across the major indexes in Friday trade, with the S&P 500 posting its best weekly gain since November. The Dow was up 335 points. The S&P 500 gained 59 points, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq surged 292. The Biden administration launching the second round of the landmark provision in the Inflation Reduction Act to make expensive medications more affordable for seniors, announcing 15 drugs for Medicare price negotiations. Those discounts will go into effect in 2027. The news hitting Novo Nordisk shares. It is among the biggest drugs that will be negotiated. It will include its blockbuster diabetes injection Ozempic, weight loss shot Wegovy, and diabetes pill Rybelsus. They're considered one product because they share the same ingredient, semaglutide. You can find the full list of medications up for negotiation at CNBC.com. Meantime, on Friday, the Federal Trade Commission sued PepsiCo in a last-minute lawsuit for the administration, accusing the beverage giant of price discrimination by alleging it gave Walmart an unfair pricing advantage, forcing people to pay higher prices elsewhere. PepsiCo denies the allegations and said the lawsuit is wrong on the facts and the law. Walmart has yet to respond. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back over to you in Mumbai.
And now, as Donald Trump takes up the White House later tonight, Indian time, and amid the expectations of the policies to come through, what sectors will act as safe havens in the U.S. market? Laurie Kalvasina of RBC Capital Markets explains the same. Listen in.
look, I think a lot of the, sort of less challenging stuff for markets, the good stuff, so to speak, from the Trump administration, easier regulation, M&A, increased business optimism, all that stuff feels like maybe it hasn't quite happened in a big wave yet, but it's still kindling. And some of the more challenging things like tariffs just aren't that relevant here. So I think this is still a good sector to be in. I do like the regional banks better than the investment banks, but I think there's still more to be done here.
Well, that's all the global market action, but how will all of these overnight cues impact our own markets? Our research team is joining in with the trade set of the stocks that are likely to be in focus as well. On Friday morning, we told you about the fact that the Nifty recovery, the 3-day recovery that we had seen ahead of Friday's trading session, hinges on three very important factors. And those were the three important earnings that we reacted to, be it Infosys, Reliance Industries and Axis Bank. And despite Reliance Industries doing well for itself, ending 2.5% higher, those gains were offset by the losses that were seen in Infosys and in Axis Bank. And if you pull up the contributors chart, that'll give you an idea of how the 56-point gain was offset by a 68-point drop in Infosys and a 32-point drop in Axis Bank. So those two contributing 100 points out of 108 that the Nifty ended lower on Friday, with the 3-day gaining streak came to a halt, and as a result of which the index ended 1% lower for the week. Similar action on the Nifty Bank as well, 0.5% lower for the week, but the actual action took place in the broader markets. Remember, the mid-cap and the small-cap indices ended 4% lower last Monday, and over the next 4 days, they recovered all of those losses. The mid-cap index ending just 11 points higher compared to last Friday's close, but it was a green, and the small-cap index too ending just above the flat line for the week. Now, I highlight some positive triggers for today's trading session for the Nifty at least. It's a strong handover from Wall Street. US markets ended very well yesterday. We just spoke about that. Earnings from Kotak Mahindra Bank were very strong. Upgrades have come in from there, so that can lend some support. And of course, the Wipro ADR ending 4% higher on Friday as well. Of course, caution also remains ahead of HDFC Bank's results this week, Trump's uncertainty as well as the statements that he'll make post-inauguration, and of course keep an eye out on the oil prices and the dollar index as well. Plenty of earnings reactions today, a lot of F&O earnings also today, and the GIFT Nifty so far is indicating a slightly positive start for our own markets. But over to Vamakshi now, who would list out the stocks that you need to keep an eye out for in today's session. Vamakshi, good morning. What's on your list?
Well, good morning, Hormaz. Let me first start off with Wipro. The company reported CC revenue growth of 0.1% sequentially. The margin came in higher than the poll at 17.5%. In addition to that, the company has gone ahead and revised its capital allocation policy. They will be increasing payout percentage from 45 to 50% to nearly 70% or more of the 3-year profit. Kotak Mahindra Bank's NII saw an uptick of almost 10% year-on-year, coming in at 7,196 crores. Net profit too was up nearly 10% on a year-on-year basis. Tech Mahindra's CC revenue growth came in at 1.2% sequentially. This is higher than our poll of 0 to 1%. The margins have come more or less in line with estimates at 10.2%. Indian Hotels margin expanded by nearly 70 basis points to 38%. The net profit saw an uptick of almost 33%. ICICI Lombard's gross premium was marginally lower by 0.3%. The combined ratio came up to 102.7% as compared to 103.6% on a year-on-year basis, and the net profit saw a very sharp surge of almost 68%. RBL Bank's NII grew by 2.5%, coming in line with our estimates. Net profit was down nearly 86% below estimates, and the net NPA also improved to 0.53%. Ashapura Minechem, the company's arm, has signed an MOU with China Railway to jointly develop its FACO bauxite deposit in the Kindia region of Guinea. And lastly, keep an eye out on GMR airports, because the December passenger traffic was up nearly 9% year-on-year and 6% month-on-month.
Vamakshi, thanks a lot for that. Over to Mangalam now, joins in with cues from the F&O space. Mangalam, good morning. We're still holding on to 23,000, but what's the data on the F&O side indicating?
Let's look at what the data says. For starters, the GIFT Nifty is indicating a mildly positive start. On Friday, the Nifty Bank was actually under pressure, down about 1.5%. The Nifty was supported, and the mid-cap index did well. So let's look at three stocks which will be in focus. One, we have Reliance, which supported the index on the Friday. We had Infosys and Axis Bank, which actually dragged the index lower. And now today, we have positive news coming on both IT and the banking front. On the banking front, we have the Nifty Bank, which will be in focus because of Kotak Mahindra's results, which beat expectations. And on the IT front, we'll have Wipro, which will do well. On a flows perspective, we had cash markets selling off close to 3,300 crores by the FIs. Not too big given the average selling that we've seen on a daily basis, but in index futures, the selling has expanded. They sold about 2,400 odd crores and added nearly 30,000 short contracts as well, as a result of which their net exposure stands at near record high once again, negative 3.26 lakh, and the longs have fallen to 16% as well. So any up move, we need to watch out for it sustaining only to see some short covering. Otherwise, this selling pressure will continue. What are the options that the street is playing with? 23,200 call and 23,200 put. We ended around the 23,200 mark on Friday itself. So that's the straddle which is most active. 183 on 23,200 call and 150 on 23,200 put. Roughly 300 rupee premium. Option writers expecting a range between 22,900 to 23,500 itself. Canfin Homes, we pointed out the possibility of it entering F&O ban. That's happened. And we'll keep an eye out on Kalyan Jewelers. The stock is in F&O ban. Seen a big cut. Long positions are being unwound. Would there be any buying at lower levels or not is something we'll keep an eye out on.
There's been a stock that has been in focus all of last week as well, isn't it, Mangalam? Thanks a lot for that. Time for a short break. Up next, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting kicks off in Davos. We get you all the takeaways from the first day. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos has kicked off, and this time the theme is collaboration in an intelligent age. And one of the big questions to be asked at this event is what the global impact would be once Donald Trump takes charge. Now, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the US tonight, and his second term, where several heads of state, VIPs, business leaders are expected to be a part of that 5 lakh guest list that are expected at the inauguration later this evening. Now, my colleague Shireen Bhan, who is in Davos, spoke to Borje Brende, who's the president and CEO of the World Economic Forum, who believes that the incoming US president will focus more on the 2 I's, which is inflation and immigration, both of which he has used as a poll plank. Listen into a slice of that conversation.
My first question, you've pulled off quite the coup. Donald Trump will address the World Economic Forum, not in person, but virtually, literally 2 days after he takes office. How did you pull this off?
So, you know that President-elect Trump has been to Davos twice in
2018
person.
and 2020.
Yeah, he's the only sitting U.S. president that has been to Davos twice. He really likes it here. You know, he's a businessman. He likes to also meet the global business people to hear their input and have a discussion. And for me, it's great that he, 2 days after the inauguration, is live on video link with us here in Davos with 3,000 participants. And he's not only giving a speech, but he's also then having an interaction with some key CEOs. That's what he likes.
Well, so the interaction is going to be much anticipated along with what he has to say. But what's the expectation? What are you picking up in terms of what people would like to hear from President Trump? What would be the key questions that they would like him to address, you know, beyond tariffs and so on and so forth?
So for him in the U.S., I think he won the elections on the 2 I's, fighting inflation and on immigration. So I think we will see very soon some steps on the immigration side. But on the inflation, it's a more of a mixed thing. So he will need to also then share what is his economic policy to keep the growth going, but also making sure that inflation is not coming back.
On inflation, since you said that that is likely to be one of the big focus areas, the concern is that with the tariffs, whether it's 10, 20 or as high as 60%, which has been the threat, that could have an inflationary impact. What is the expectation that you're going with in terms of just how severe the tariffs are likely to be and the implications and the impact on that on world trade as well as U.S. inflation?
So on inflation, of course, tariffs can play a role. But we also know from Trump 1.0, his first period, now we're Trump 2.0, that he used also tariffs to negotiate. And he already had a call with President Xi Jinping of China yesterday, and they spoke and also discussed many issues and topics. So I think on the tariffs, we'll also see what it really ends with. I think he's going to use it as a negotiating position, especially where he feels that the U.S. has a big trade deficit. And of course, the biggest trade deficit he has with China. He also has a trade deficit with Europe, but that is a little bit depending on how you look at it. If you also add services and you add digital trade, it's pretty much the same. And I think digital trade and services also plays a big role in the trade with India.
And keep an eye out on all the exclusive coverage that comes in from Davos all through today and of course all through the week right here on CNBC TV 18. And time for a short break now on Power Breakfast. Cues from the commodities market on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back onto what potentially could be the stock of today. Kotak Mahindra Bank reported better than expected third quarter results. Abhishek is here with the fine print. Abhishek, good morning.
Good morning, Homer. So across parameters, Kotak Mahindra Banks has beaten on expectations. So take a look at the NII and PAT. They are ahead of our poll. Now, what's worked in the result is the net interest margin. Now, analysts were pegging net interest margin to decline on a sequential basis, but it's improved by 2 basis points on a sequential basis to 4.93%. Even slippages have declined on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Now, analysts were pegging 200 to 300 crore higher slippages versus the previous quarter, but the slippages have actually declined. Even the annualized slippage ratio has declined to 1.6% versus around 1.9% in the previous quarter. Hence, asset quality has improved or largely remains stable. Gross NP ratio is at 1.5% versus Motilal Oswal estimate of about 1.56%. Even the business momentum is better than analyst expectation. Deposit growth is nearly 16% YOY versus Motilal Oswal expectation of 15% YOY. The advances growth have come in at 15% YOY versus Motilal Oswal estimate of 14% YOY. So there is strong operating profit growth this time around at 11.5% YOY and about 4% sequentially. What's not worked in the result is the subsidiaries performance, which has declined both YOY and quarter on quarter with respect to earnings, which is of Kotak Mahindra Prime and Kotak Mahindra Investment. However, thumbs up to the results, and they have got upgraded from many brokerages as well. Back to you.
Abhishek, thanks a lot for that. And it is these strong results and the brokerage upgrades that will keep the stock in focus through the day. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast. From me and the team that put this show together, thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call sets you up for today's trade.